check.
Oh, God.
Okay. I think it'll follow people, but if I need to adjust.
All right, well, welcome, everybody. We're waiting on. Who else are we waiting on? Magdalena. Emily is here remotely tonight. She's not feeling well. Roberto is going to join remotely if he can. He had to go attend to an ill family member. Hello, David. Welcome. We're right here. So much. I have no reason not to expect Alejandro and Magdalena, but if the board wants to start this forum, you may.
Do we have Emily? We have Emily? Let's give them another 2 minutes. We'll call before 4 minutes. 6:10. Okay. Oh, no. Hi, Emily.
She's just throwing a school, dedicated teacher.
We have a attendees.
Sorry?
Are there guests? Public guests?
Yes.
Currently,
We have 4 members of the public and or our school community online right now.
okay, then I apologize. We're just going to give the rest of the board members another 2 or 3 minutes to see if they can make it before we call the meeting to order. So I apologize for those at home who are waiting on us.
Okay. And a comment from Emily Audio is not amazing, so I would just speak aggressively, clearly when it is part of the meeting. Right now, you and
No,
David are
oh,
pretty.
Michael, I was just saying that to you. That when folks in the room, the chat, just you, when folks in the room are speaking, if they could just speak super clearly.
Super
Not a-
clearly,
And
especially through our masks.
teach your voice.
It's an elocution
I think
challenge.
that's it. I mean, you taking that out to be more clear.
Way to put it more centrally is just the microphone.
Where did I put the?
As long as we project.
It'll be okay. You put the agenda somewhere before?
Yes. You have it up on screen.
Oh, then. Oh, I got it. You guys just sent two numbers out of the. And Alejandro, did you speak with Alejandro?
I did not confirm he would be here.
Okay, in that case, it being just about 6:10, I'd like to call the October meeting of the LEEP Board of Trustees to order. If we could just pull up the agenda again, I think we had some quick old business, routine business to dispose of. Have the board members have an opportunity to review the agenda for today? That being the case, can we entertain a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye, any opposed? Thank you. Have the board members present had an opportunity to review the September meeting minutes? Seeing some nods, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written. Or I will enter a motion to approve the minutes as written. Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay? Thank you. Okay. I think that brings us to officers. Okay. Having tabled the officer elections earlier this year to give new board members more time to work with each other and learn a little bit about each other, we would like to revisit both the executive committee board members as well as the committee members. So that being the case, I will entertain nominations for board chair. And I would personally nominate Emily Fernandez to that position. Should I have a second?
I second.
Do I have any other nominations for the position of board chair? Hearing none, I would ask the board to vote on Emily Fernandez as chair of the board. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I pass this great burden to Emily, who I hope, who I know rather is up to the challenge and I believe better suited for it than anyone I could have possibly thought of. So I'm honored that she's with us, and I hope that this will just be a very positive sign of good things to develop here.
Congratulations, Emily.
Congratulations, Emily, and thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the kind words and for leading us in this time, and everyone for all of the collaboration and more to come. I'm so sorry to not be in person today, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do this with each of you.
We will just have to shower you with praise next month. Okay. But perhaps with that, you'd like to take the rest of the way, or if easier for me because I'm here, you let me know.
I would love to delegate that to you for this session with you in the room. And I'll be full steam ahead and take over after that, after this session.
So hopefully hearing no strenuous objection to that, I will continue with the executive board elections. I think for this year, the outgoing executive committee, myself included, wanted to nominate Maho as the vice chair of the board for this year. It's not something we've done in the prior years I've been here, but I think that that Maho has a great deal to offer the school, and being able to work with Emily would just improve both of their vision and commitment to the school, and I think it'd be a great opportunity to grow. So assuming that Maho is okay with that, I would like to nominate her for that position as well, should I have a second?
Second. Enthusiastic second.
Okay, we'll make sure that's in the minutes. Enthusiasm. But wonderful. So I would also entertain any other nominations for the position of vice chair. Should there be? Hearing none, I would ask the board to vote on the position of vice chair. Maho being nominated. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And any opposed? Okay. I think that brings us to secretary, because we're going to get to on the executive side. So Charles has done a yeoman's job of being the secretary of this board, and if it were up to me, he would continue. So if someone would like to nominate Charles for that, and he is not opposed, I think we would entertain such a nomination. I'm also open to discussing other nominations, but I really think things have been going very well. So should Charles be up to the task, I would recommend to continue.
I'm happy to nominate Charles. I'm assuming you're not opposed.
And I'm happy to put it in enthusiastic section.
Oh, thank you. I will do my best transcribing.
We're not making it easy with the masks, but hearing no other nominations for secretary, I would call to vote on Charles as the continuing secretary of the Board of Trustees of LEEP Academy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? No opposed. On the executive committee, that leaves the treasurer position. I have been doing that since Joaquin left a couple of years ago. I kind of expected why I'm here, but I'm happy to discuss other folks and what you guys want to do with that. And I think the finance committee will need some more meat anyway. So there are more ways to get involved. But if you have thoughts now.
I would say that as a member of the finance committee, that David does an excellent job chairing that committee, and is a great treasurer, very thorough. And so I would like to, unless there's any objections, I would like to nominate David to serve another term as treasurer.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any other nominations for the position of treasurer? Hearing none, I will call to vote myself for another year as treasurer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Surprisingly, hearing none, I will be another year of treasury. Bob, I'm sorry. That brings us to committee. Or can we do that in executive session?
I think you could vote on a slate of committee assignments in one vote if you'd like. I could even use the whiteboard if you want to brainstorm that out.
Well, I think I have what mine would look like. I'm happy to nominate how I think that would be. I think the only outline question will be whether we have a committee today or whether we talk about that in the executive session. And I'll let someone give us some more color on that if their opinion is there. But I think that when it comes to the Academic and Accountability Committee, we've again seen good work and great background from Emily. So I see absolutely no reason to change that position at all. I think Maho has come in with vigor to it, and everything that I'm hearing is interested and involved in it. I'd like there to be a third person on that committee, and I was going to recommend you. I'd like the parents to be involved in the Academic Accountability Committee to the extent we have people that have more of a background in education. I think that that's also a good place for them. I think in this room, it's a little bit limited in our education background, so I want to make sure we put our strongest group in that camp, and that those are the people with the biggest investment in what's going there. And so, to me, the parents and the academic background make the most sense for that committee of our current slate. When it came to the finance committee, I assume I'd be sitting there myself again. If Charles doesn't object, I think he's fine to continue and very helpful to continue. I also would recommend Alejandro for that committee having a background in school operations and a little bit of an understanding of how the P&Ls of those things should be looking, and a way to give us some insight on ideas we may not have from his background. And the other thing on my plate, before I made a point of making Emily chair first, was that I wanted to see a committee that was really involved in the parent-student life of the school, not the academic life, but the outside and ongoing life. And I obviously had in mind David Estrada as a pillar of the community, but also someone I think people know and recognize as that to really spearhead that. And so I was hoping that maybe you'd have an idea of who you'd like to work with you on. Who to work with.
No, I don't have an idea about that.
You have a limited selection.
Seems like everybody's pretty tapped.
Right, you see, we love
But I mean,
it so much.
but based into what you said would be more parent involvement,
Mhm.
but also on terms that parents can be involved. So as parent of little ones, I know capacity is sometimes very limited and timing is crucial.
Mhm.
So I'd hope we could have at least a cohort of parents who might each take a portion of action in that context without having to carry too much burden individual. And that's a little harder. That takes a little cultivation to bring together. So.
Well, look, that's a good point.
I was gonna just check in terms of like how this works. Would committee members have to be board members, or can they be
So no, I
other
mean,
members
they
of the
don't.
parent community?
And that's what I was about to say. Maybe if we want to say, okay, well, as a board, we would like to see this committee grow, we'll give David some bandwidth to think about how he would like to shape it. Well, that might be enough for today.
Yeah, but also I'd need to partner up with someone who's a little more embedded over time with the LEEP. I'm relatively new to the inside of LEEP operations. I perceive it from the outside as a leaseholder and an employer and a constituent, but that, I've picked up a lot by inference and care and just personal conversation. But I really need to have a guide almost to where the needs are and where the strengths are inside of the community. If I take the meaning of your, the sense of your formation of the committee properly.
I think you do. I mean, maybe you're biting off more than I expected in that comment, but I do think you're seeing exactly where I would like that to develop. It doesn't have to be overnight, right? I mean, we're starting from scratch. We're cutting new cloth. Not to sound too biblical, but we're going to make it in our image, if you will, right? And so we want to look and do exactly that, but give you the latitude to plan.
Yeah, step by step,
I would just add, I think Margarita Chang, our director of family experience, could be someone else also to speak with who's really invested in the community, really also just know the needs of our school. Of course, any of us are happy to help us.
And I'm also happy to spend some time brainstorming and talking about this. We had a lot of ideas, a lot of things that were about to take place right before the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there were a lot of plans back then. We had a big push towards that, and then, well, the plans mostly fell apart because of the pandemic. And now we need to find a new way to do things in this new post-pandemic.
Mid-post, I love
Yeah,
that.
something like, we're not quite done with it, but now we
The
have.
fourth act. is a
Exactly, we're
pandemic.
not done with the pandemic, but we're now able to do some things that we weren't able to do before.
Mhm.
And I don't think I have enough time and bandwidth to be like a full committee member, but I'm happy to help brainstorm, help start it, help maybe connect with other parents that might be interested in joining.
And that's reassuring, because I mean, the last thing a really active community that's really already integrated with itself needs is someone to just walk in and start popping off, ideas and opinions. I mean, in a way, there's foundation work,
There is
some of which
there
might
is
have been
some.
left behind and might be perfectly right to tee up again. And then there's new conditions that none of us understood before the pandemic, and it will never be the same again. So that's where I'd want to be touching base with people who are closer to the daily life.
Just a thought to interject. I believe Magdalena is not here tonight, but I think we could also talk with her around where what committee would make sense for her following this.
Yeah, I just didn't want to commit her without her being here to tell me not to. But yes.
It should, yeah. Did you speak to Alejandro about joining finance? You did, okay.
So do we have an opinion on Magdalena, where you'd like her to be in the slate?
No, I think,
Emily?
sorry.
Sorry.
I never spoke to her. She was on my list of people to speak with, and she was busy with family issues, but
I will say Magdalena has joined some of our academic committee meetings
okay.
over the past year.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's where she.
So with her social work background, we appreciate her help. But it's also possible to add a committee member in a subsequent meeting if that's easier.
Yeah, we should do that.
My two issues, and just to voice my opinion, are that I don't want to commit Magdalena to something she can't do because of time or whatever the issues are. And the other is we don't have wonderful protocols for even person communities right now, and I don't want to get lost in that answer. So that being said, I would recommend the slates as I've said them for now, knowing that we can change the committee assignments later on. It's really the executive committee assignments, which we've already done. Other than that, we must have the other committees, academic and finance. That being said, I would nominate the slate that I've described, myself, Charles, and Alejandro in finance, Melody, Maho, and Emily in academic accountability, and David to spearhead our neighborhood relation, first job naming committee. Okay, that would be my recommendation. Should we have?
I think
Can I second?
you can't second it yet.
No.
You can't serve on the
Second.
committee.
Oh, no. Is that like paperwork?
Bad guy.
I got you. I hear you.
All right, so Maho seconded. David,
It's spiritually seconded.
I move.
David moved.
I know, yeah.
Maho seconded.
And I would give the rest of the board a minute or anytime they need to propose another alternative slate. Hearing none, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor of the slate as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you so much for your help, guys. We have elected board officers and the board committees. Onward.
All right. Our next item is the executive director's reports, which, as you all know, tends to de facto come from our team, and we're glad to have Deli Ness and Matthew and John here with us. Deli Ness having been out for the last couple of days. We haven't had a chance to rehearse these, but Ines, I hope you'll jump in and as freely as you'd like. The enrollment of the school, we're going to leave this as the top item. It is, last month was 93%, we're up to 94%, 316 students. We'll talk in the finance section about some of the implications of that. But we do continue to do outreach, and for any family members on the line or watching this later, we do continue to offer a free uniform if you refer a family who joins us as a token of our thanks for building up the community. So that's an ongoing area of work for our team. In terms of hiring, we have made some progress since last month. We are essentially fully staffed. We have one additional teacher who we expect to join us next month, but we were able to add one experienced teacher already a couple of weeks ago who's been helping in different roles around the school, but bringing her experience in particular to our first grade team, which has been very helpful. We are taking our time to make sure we have the right people in the right roles, but we're glad to be able to do that, and we'll continue to make sure that we're cultivating candidates for next year and just not letting up on the recruitment effort. I didn't put it in the slide, but we have a new pathway for recruitment. We have an opportunity to hire teacher candidates who are otherwise qualified through H-1B visa process without having to go through the uncertainty of the H-1B lottery. And that's a development we were working on for quite a while. But it bodes well because, as you all know, having high-level Spanish and high-level teaching experience is what we look for. It's not easy to find. And we also really value our international diversity. So looking ahead to future years' recruitment, we hope to take advantage of some of that as well. Academically, I will say a couple of things, but again, Delinas, please feel free to jump in. We've completed our fall math testing, which measures students' achievement in math and English language reading. We circulated as a pre-read some of those results, and the academic committee had a chance to chew up on it a little bit last night. We do continue to see challenges, both in terms of absolute proficiency and growth. And so that's what's driving a lot of the changes and adjustments that we're talking about. The committee raised some good questions. Our team has raised some good questions. So we're going to continue to do some analysis to look, for example, at the impact of having been remote last year and some of the other cuts at the data that we can do. But in the meantime, the instructional leadership team has been looking across the board at how we can strengthen our practices. We talk about this every month, but that work continues. And I've listed here on the slide some examples of the steps that Delinas has put in place for third grade in particular. Of course, third grade is going to be our first tested grade. It doesn't mean we're not paying attention to instructional quality in every grade level, but this is a good example. So, I mean, Delinas, would you mind kind of talking through some of this, give the board a flavor?
Sure. Well, like Michael said, I'd also just add that not just ELA, but also math. So we tested both math, English language arts, and math as well. And this is our fall data, right, showing us where our students are at and where we need to go, where we need to head to make sure that they're achieving academic proficiency. Michael shared with everyone the third grade recovery plan that I put together with the specific steps that we're taking in third grade. But in addition to that, as Michael said, we're not just looking at third grade in isolation. Obviously, we need to make sure that all of our kids are receiving the types of supports that they need to make sure that they get what they need to get. So we had a PD day this last month where we had all of our grade levels analyzing the data that came in for their particular grade level. And we worked on creating specific plans for each grade level and seeing what are the areas that our students are struggling with. The teachers were able to look at their specific class data and group our students according to ability. What are the areas that our kids are struggling with, because math is able to give us that information, right? For example, is it algebraic thinking? Is it numbers and operations? And so we're able to get that information. And so we've created small group instruction for our students that happens on Wednesdays for math. And students are leveled by their RIT score. That's the score that math gives them. And we're giving them targeted interventions to remediate some of those skills that we see are missing at this point. And then we also looked at reading, and we looked at that in comparison to where our kids are in STEP. Given the last piece of data that we have from STEP, they'll be assessed once again in November to see whether or not we were seeing correlation there between their STEP level and the level that they got at MAP, and making any tweaks or adjustments that we need to make in the groupings there. Also speaking to the deans around what are some of the things that we can do outside of that intervention time? What are the things that we need to spiral review? What are the types of drills that we need to do in the morning, whether it's multiplication in third grade, counting fluently from 1 to 100 and kinder in first grade? What are those routines, academic routines that we can incorporate and make sure that we're doing every day to see faster growth? So we're really being responsive to the data that we're getting, and we're analyzing it deeply and thinking about what are the instructional implications that has for us to make sure that we're continuing to move in the right direction.
Thank you very much. I clearly need to look up when I'm speaking because I did not introduce Mr. Sanchez. So Edgar Sanchez is here, Director of Student Services, and we're glad that you're here, Edgar.
And I would say that Edgar is a big part of this as head of our RTI intervention and special education services. So in collaboration with Edgar, we are using the data to also see who are the students that are already receiving intervention, and then seeing, are there any students who are in that bottom quartile that for whatever reason did not make it into this particular round, and we need to make sure are added to that additional intervention pull out and push out system that we have right now. And so Edgar has also looked at the data and looked at how are our SPED students doing, how are English language learners doing, and then thinking about overall who are the kids who are at the bottom there that need to be added into our RTI rounds for next round.
Questions on the academics?
I don't know if this is so much a question, but is it still really the case that the third graders present unique challenges compared to the other grades? Being the first cohort to come to the school, not having had kinder with you, that sort of thing?
We've had that. What I will say is that the gap is closing.
Okay.
And so in comparison to when they first came in, right now, they're about 5 points in terms of below the average mean for RIT. That has shrunk year to year, and we're closing that gap. So about 70% of our students in third grade met their RIT goals, which is really much better than we were when our first third grade cohort started with us. So I think that the level of attention that cohort has gotten this last year going into this year has really helped move them along, which is great to see. And for me, it's sort of thinking about what are the things that we're doing with third grade that we should adopt school-wide, because we do see that level of growth happening in third grade. I think, for example, the intervention piece last year was really targeted with third grade as well. And now we're expanding that school-wide where every grade level has an interventionist. That wasn't the case last year. And we're hoping that that makes an impact as well.
You made a comment earlier, Michael, about not just overall proficiency. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we move on, can you just, for those of us who don't spend time in math all day, 5 points, what percentage of the points is that? Like, do they need to get a 50 and they're 5 points shy, or do they need 150 and they're 5 points shy? You said that the
Yeah.
students are about 5 points away
So,
on average.
Yeah,
And
so
what's the
there's,
score they're looking to achieve? How
so,
many points?
yeah, so they're at, I believe, a 183 is the score that they're at, and they should be at a 188.
Okay, so it's very small.
Yeah. Mhm.
That. So, I'm sorry,
The
Michael.
average.
Yes, no, and 70% of them being better, which is great.
70% met their rate goal, yeah. So there, every time, every term, there's a projected proficiency that each individual student has in terms of this is
Always
how
a
much
personal one.
growth. There's the personal one, and then the RIT score is every kid in 3rd grade in the country who took this test, this is where they averaged, and here is how we did in comparison to the national norm.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm sorry, Michael, you made a comment earlier that tripped my ears up, and maybe the Academic Accountability Committee will tell us, but you said that it's not just overall proficiency that you're judging, but also growth continuously, and that those steps hadn't necessarily met your expectations. Did I hear that correctly? In both categories, or?
It's hard to know what the proper amount of growth to expect is. School-wide, I think we've had more progress in ELA than in math. And depending on whether you're looking at fall to fall or spring to fall, and which cohort of kids you're looking at, we're not always seeing growth in mathematics. That was something that we saw in last year's annual data. Looking at the fall or baseline data for this year, we continue to see that. So I think I would focus that comment on the mathematics. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, math continues to be the area where we're seeing less growth, and we're seeing more growth in reading. And so we're definitely thinking through again, what are the pieces that we did when we saw the gap in reading that helped us improve there? What are the things that we now need to cross over and do in math as well to make sure that we're getting our students the supports they need in math? Last year, there was a big focus in reading with the pandemic and shifting from remote in person. There was the decision of really focusing on literacy because kids need to know how to read even to access the math piece. So there was a very big focus on that. But we really, I'm reflecting as a leader, what are the things that we now need to do to make sure that both areas are getting the attention that they need, and that we're also moving results on the math side.
One concern that came to our attention through the academic committee, which we talked a little bit about yesterday, was around the quality of homework that's been assigned. And so I know that's also something that we're going to be looking through as a team. We want to make sure that homework is valuable, that it's review rather than new information, that it's differentiated to the extent that it needs to be, and of course that it's accurate in both languages. So, as the team to have a look at that as part of the regular planning. Joanna was able to join us last night and speak to some of what the instructional leadership team's been up to, and so that a lot of work on a lot of different fronts. And then I would finally just mention that we have just finished the interim assessments, which are designed to replicate or imitate the New York State assessments. There's several rounds of those, and those provide data for detailed planning, but also help our kids get used to the practice of test taking, get used to what it means to sit quietly and fill in bubbles and read in a self-directed way, and also help build up some stamina during the year. So we're really able to test their achievement and not their test-taking ability by the time that we get to the spring. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's right. And that's for second and third.
Thank you. Yeah. Not for K and 1, but just for second and third.
Who provides the interim assessments? What companies?
They're self-create. We
You do.
create
Are
them
you creating yourself?
internally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We
How
have
often?
a program that's called All in Learning that we've been utilizing to help create the assessment. So it has a library, it's an assessment bank. And so we use some of those and then some of our own self-created questions. But we look at the state assessment and see what's the type of questions that we're seeing
kids will be exposed to, and we try to make sure that it aligns with what we know they will get tested on for the state test.
They publish SATs. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a lot of work.
A lot of the work, and our deans are the ones creating the assessments for their particular grade level. Knowing, right, they look at what are the standards that have been assessed till that point of the assessment. What are the units, and make sure that it's aligned to what kids have already been exposed to and have learned. And again, also aligned to the type of questions and the rigor that we know they will take when they take the state assessment.
A very light question. Do we have a sense of, in general, this very general question, if kids enjoyed the testing? If most of them, I know mine did. He thought it was super fun, and I know that sometimes helps if they don't, they don't.
Yeah, there were some pump up celebrations that happened that were planned in the grade levels to get the students excited and motivated for the test. So that was intentionally designed to get them pumped up and excited. I think that again, it's a learning curve for a lot of our students in terms of that being able to sustain that energy and time. And for some of them, it was more exhausting than others. And so we, for some of them, we just got to continue to work on that stamina with them.
How long are these?
So they're about an hour as it is right now, but it's across 2 days. The last week we had the IAs and we had some other assessments from other subjects that were going on. So it felt a little bit heavier on the assessment side. But generally, we're asking our students to spend their ELA block. For example, it was the ELA interim assessment that they took during that block of that 60 to 80-minute period doing the assessment. Some finish earlier, some take the whole block, and then some don't finish, and we're not timing them, right? We let them finish the assessment at their pace.
We're always happy to field questions and discuss academic matters in between meetings. So some members of our board do that, and we appreciate it. We really do. If you haven't picked up the phone or shot an email to Kelly Ness or me or a member of our team, like, that's a thing. You can totally do that. You get an article, or you're wondering, or your kid says something, or whatever it may be. It's an ongoing conversation. Since we have Matthew Padilla here, Matthew, can you say a couple of words about the latest and greatest in terms of COVID safety in the building?
Sure. So most recently, we started doing our weekly COVID testing in partnership with the DOE. So the partner that we were assigned was BioReference Labs. And so we've been working with them to do weekly testing for the students. Testing is only for our first, second, and third graders. We're not allowed to currently test our K students. So they have been coming on Thursday. So they will be here this Thursday as well in the morning time. And typically the process as it stands, again, we've only done this once, but it takes about an hour, and they're testing about 30 kids, give or take, because there's a threshold that we have to abide by. And so the kids come up, they're escorted by usually an ops staff member, and it's a pretty quick process. Typically they send 2 providers and they do a shallow nasal swab, and then that's pretty much it. The results are then delivered typically within 72 hours, and that gets delivered directly to the families as well as the school. So we're also aware of the results. And families, of course, had to sign a waiver and a consent form to approve all of that. So that has been happening. And then, of course, we have all of the other COVID safety protocols that we've been using since the beginning of the year.
Positive tests?
Not yet.
Great. Great.
Some wood
Can
and
I ask
knock
another
on
dumb
it.
question? Sorry, can I ask a dumb question, not a jinxy question, but you need 10% of the students to meet the mandate of the testing requirement. But you also need consent of the parents to test the children. What if you didn't get it?
Well, if we didn't get it, we would have, continued pushing with our families. We would have had follow-up conversations, made a couple phone calls.
I'm more literally curious what would happen, right? Like if you said to the state, hey, we have 300 kids and their parents all said, don't touch my kid.
Yeah.
Do you know what they would do in that situation?
I don't, unfortunately, we're not in that
Okay.
situation.
Probably not good.
No, I have no idea. And like, I
Yes.
know that we're in a world where regulations are being made, but not a lot of, there's not always a lot of follow through because they just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm kind of curious if you know or have a plan or understand that situation.
Yeah, no, I think in a situation like that, we would have reached out to, a partner at the DOE and just asked them for, hey, this is the situation. What are those next steps? But luckily, we're not in that situation.
Are you testing staff?
We have the ability to, however, we're not. And we do have the vaccine mandate for staff members. And I believe all except one staff member who has a medical exemption is vaccinated. They're all vaccinated.
That was my next question. The number was higher last time. Okay, great. Thanks. And any of the staff have reported COVID? Self-reported having COVID?
Like a positive case?
Yeah.
No.
Great. Excellent.
We mentioned last time the possibility of a childhood vaccine. Obviously, that has not been sort of approved and rolled out into our world at this moment. We will be monitoring that. I know it's a campaign talking point in the mayoral election, what would be required in New York City. All we can do right now is keep an eye on that piece and try to stay in touch with our families. So stay tuned on that front. But the big policy at the moment is this what we thought last month would be bi-weekly testing, but has turned out to in fact be weekly. Great. And so the last update that I would share is a quick one, but related to facility planning. We continue to plan for the near term and the longer term. In the near term, we are very close to lease agreement for some nearby space to use starting next school year, starting this summer, really. So we will share those details as soon as we possibly can, and ideally be able to have something for you all to vote on by November's meeting. So that's very encouraging. Happy to talk more specifics in executive session if anybody wants to get into real estate details. The second,
Michael, I'm here if necessary to answer any questions.
oh, thank you, Roberto. I did not realize you had joined. So do you want to talk a little bit about the longer term progress?
Sure, thank you. And again, apologies for arriving late. Our mutual friend, dear friend, Mr. Nelson Brahms, was one of my early benefactors to LEEP. And he lives in Connecticut. And today I got a call from his wife that he was not doing well. And so I went up to visit with him, as Michael knows, and he sends his best regards. He calls himself Lazarus, and he's back on his feet again. But it's all good, and he really has been invested in our school and from the very beginning. Anyway, we are really pleased with the report that our partners at DBI completed. It is a very thorough, comprehensive report, as we've been reporting. The architects have given us many different creative solutions to having space for our school, for our 4th and 5th grade for the long term. We love all of them. They are very well thought through. We are working on plans that could be very extensive to something as minimalist as taking over the bank space in one floor, just so that we're prepared for all contingencies. A lot depends on the disposition of the bank space and how that's going to be dealt with by the landlord, and also the disposition of the overall building. We're still working with the landlord to try to negotiate a purchase of the building. We continue to work with our brokerage firm of AY Evison Young. DBI has helped with me, and we're coordinating all of this work. The architects have just delivered another set of plans, again, to provide a minimalist use of the bank space. We've also been able to shore up the space at the corner of, well, it's the Brooklyn Rise space. When that school moves out, we've negotiated with the landlord to take over that lease as a overflow space for the next couple of 2 or 3 years. And that's really going to provide us with ample room to be able to manage our school while we develop the rest of the building, should that be the board's decision. These things, you wish that they would be done faster, but because there's so many pieces to this, including not just design, not just taking over the building, but also financing of the building. And so this week we're having, I'm hosting a couple of organizations who want to come to our building, want to come visit the school. And these organizations, business of financing to nonprofit schools, charter schools, just like us. And they're very pleased with our story so far, and we're happy to show them the school. I think going forward, I've asked Avison Young to prepare even additional plans in the event that we have to provide a different kind of facility going forward. We still have our eyes set on one day having 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So a lot is going into our decisions and our discussions, and we just want to provide the board with all of the options as we go forward. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Roberto, this is David Estrada.
Hey, David.
Can you hear me? Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Just a thought for inspiration. I wonder if you visited the Brooklyn Public Library facility on 43rd Street and its adaptive reuse of the interior space with temporary design for the library facility, because it's quite analogous to the Chase interior. That's in the historic courthouse at 4th Avenue and 43rd. And it's not a direct comparison, but that was a relatively low cost, though award-winning design that has been serving well for a few years, but is intended to wrap up as soon as the new library opens at 53rd. So if it wasn't on your radar, give it a shot. If you already know of it, then we agree. But
Thank you, David.
No, that's a very good point, Dave. We actually love that building. I've been doing. You remember our old friend Joaquin lives on that block, and we've had a number of meetings at that space in addition to the CB7 community board meeting. So I'm very familiar with the space. I love the space. I think it's a great facility. I think we've got a number of options, and I'll certainly continue to include that one as yet another possibility as they finish out their library space on 4th Avenue.
Yeah, because I mean, even the Brooklyn Public Library design team, their internal team and their design consultants might have some wisdom on phasing in use of an interior space of that scale in a historic building.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. So more to come, certainly on that front. It's all right. We have one other order of new business. The Student and Family Handbook is largely still applicable to our school. However, there are some adjustments that we need to make. I had mentioned this last month with an apology for not having it ready last month, but for this month we circulated in the pre-reads a brief set of adjustments that we'd like to make, and the academic committee reviewed these last night. But in a nutshell, we wanted to add some detail about our homework expectations, how homework gets graded, and the parents had questions about that. Vice Principal Andujar, who's here tonight, has been working on our attendance and school culture. And so thank you, Joanna, for adding a lot of detail around how we communicate with families when a student is absent, either for a number of days in a row or a cumulative number of days. We want to be very transparent with what that means, because it just is so important that we have students here consistently. A little bit of new language. We had information about the uniforms that was mostly focused on how you buy them, which I know has actually been a challenge this year for some families. But we also just are reinforcing that is a behavioral expectation to have the full uniform. We're doing classroom birthday parties instead of trying to group them together once a month. But as long as they're scheduled during recess and as long as families reach out to our vice principal at least a week ahead of time so we can coordinate that. So that's a fun tradition that frankly, whatever we put in the handbook, parents expect to be able to have a little birthday party, and that's a nice thing. And then finally, we have not made any material changes to the code of conduct itself, but you saw a little paragraph describing some of the factors that go into our application of professional judgment. Because we are a responsive classroom school, we want to have proactive behavior management. It's a little bit inconsistent to have a code of conduct that just says, if this happens, then that's the consequence. There needs to be a little bit more room for considering how student has been responding and making amends and so forth. So we're naming some of those factors. I hope everybody had a chance to read them, but these would be the changes that we'd like to make, and of course, translate them immediately and get them out to families and on our website. So happy to take questions about this, but if you want to see the full language, it's in the pre-reads.
I just didn't know homework got graded because my kids don't finish homework all the time. Like
Okay.
it's 5:45. They come some to after school. They don't finish it. They get home at 6. They have to go to like soccer practice. Like from 6 to 8. They get home at 8. They eat dinner, take a shower, and go to bed.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, like sometimes they don't finish it. I'm like, it's okay. I'm gonna push them if they're tired.
yeah. Well, I have learned the best thing for me to say is you should talk to your classroom teacher.
I was gonna wear it got graded. It sounded like it's okay.
Yeah,
Like,
so this will
I don't-
be, as we push this out, I think we can draw parents' attention to what actually is changing so that they can
Yeah.
be directed to that
Okay.
information, right?
And it comes back and so the week after it comes back, there's usually some comment on the top.
Yeah, there's a comment. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's
it
the
doesn't say
grade.
like it's being graded like a note for parents.
This is new, so.
Yeah,
I don't think
okay.
something that we communicate to families.
I just, my personal experience, with my kids, the pandemic homework seemed to just go away, and
Yeah.
now it's starting to come back, and they're like, "Whoa, what is this?" And, you know, and for me and my wife too, we have to get back in the habit of like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, we gotta make sure they're doing the homework and check it." You know, the past 18 months, it kind of just disappeared, but now, thankfully, my opinion, it's coming back a little bit.
Turn back.
Because I do like to see, like, I know there's lots of different views on homework, you guys are educators, but as a parent, I like to like just be a little bit involved. It's like, okay, this is what my daughter's working on, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
just even if it's like 10, 15 minutes, just so I can have an idea of like what they're learning
Yeah.
and be involved.
Yeah, sometimes we finish on the weekend and the teacher puts a note, it's daily. I'm like, I want to finish Saturday, and some they don't have a chance to finish their Tuesday homework or their Thursday homework. So I try to finish it on Saturday or Sunday.
I mean, I've read the changes. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the changes? Do we have any comments from the Academic Accountability Committee on these handbook changes other than what we've heard? Emily, you still with us?
Here it comes up.
I'm here. I reviewed it yesterday. I have no concerns, and I'm ready to move forward.
Okay, I couldn't see you. So,
Okay.
sorry. So provided, in my opinion, provided that the Academic Accountability Committee recommends these changes, I think we would entertain a motion to approve the changes.
Mhm. I move to approve the changes. Oh,
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the changes to the student and family handbook, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? All right. On with the homework. I don't know, my child is 3, so we're not there yet, but like I just read the newspaper and know that like, oh, it's the 21st century, I don't have homework anymore, right? At any rate, that brings us to committee reports. Okay, great. So being finance committee, I will defer to my fine friend Bob.
Great. Michael, can you enable screen sharing just so I can throw this document up?
Go for it.
Great. So September is the first month where we actually submit physical enrollment data to the department. The first two billing cycles every year are based on kind of anticipated or estimated enrollments. So it allows for kids to actually get in the building and for like our operations and enrollment team and Edgar to like kind of assess the gen ed and special education populations. The caveat here is that enrollment is down citywide. Some schools are under enrolled by more than like 40% of what they anticipated. So there are larger networks that are grossly under enrolled that will be like closing schools due to enrollment needs this year. All that to say, we're a little bit short on our budgeted enrollments. This chart here kind of lays out what our budgeted counts were. We built our budget around a budgeted enrollment of 330 students. As of the November per pupil billing cycle, we had 311 kids in the school, which is a 19 student variance. 19 students against this year's per pupil rate accounts for a revenue hit to the tune of about $323,000. On the special education side, the less than 20% tier, we don't get any supplemental funding for kids in that special education enrollment tier. Where extra funding kicks in is in this middle tier of 20 to 60% kids. And for those of you that don't work in this school, a 20 to 60% designation means that of the minutes that the student is actually in the building, he's receiving special education services for that percentage of their time. So that could be like ICT or speech therapy or things like that, or social work, counseling. So those minutes all count. So we anticipated 4 students kind of in that tier as we were budgeting, and we have 3. And then in the greater than 60% tier, we budgeted 28, and our count was 31. The 20 to 60% tier, you receive about an extra $10,500 from the Department of Education, and for the greater than 60% tier, you receive $19,049 extra on top of the base per pupil rate. So in a situation here, we're 19 students down on the gen ed side, we're 1 below on the 20 to 60% tier, and 3 students higher on the greater than 60% tier. Knowing some people, it helps to see it graphically. You're going to see this downtick on our gen ed per pupil here and a rise on our special education revenue here. What does that mean bottom line? Our budgeted surplus here was about $625,000. This is inclusive of the school taking half of its federal stimulus dollars from the Trump round 2 stimulus and the Biden stimulus. You can take those over a 3-year stretch. And as we were building our budget, we decided to kind of take it 50% in fiscal year 22 and 23. So that assumes a 50% draw of our federal revenue. Year to date, we are in a surplus posture. Again, this includes our first 2 rounds of per pupil payments, which we submitted at kind of a higher number. So this will kind of, our gains are, a little bit accelerated right now.
That will be corrected by the Department of Education.
That will be corrected by the Department of Education starting in November and amortized over the next 4 per pupil distributions. So the enrollment changes basically are hitting our bottom line for, this is your net total of about $394,000 with all the change, with all of our anticipated revenue changes. We're still projecting a six-figure surplus, albeit it's about a third of the size of what we had originally anticipated. You'll notice here, all these blank columns are indicative of the fact that we haven't done any kind of formal reforecast. So our budget is still equal to what we anticipate spending. On the salary side, you're going to see a lot of ins and outs. We may have hired an extra speech pathologist, but we didn't hire a teacher. So, and some of those salary changes, you know, we endeavor to strike a budget, to have a budget approved in May of every year. There's still some offer letters that haven't been accepted. So staffing is always kind of a moving target. So all that to say, we are still looking at a six-figure surplus. The school is making a push to enroll kids. The turnaround time on that, unfortunately, is not fast, but it, you know, I think it is something we'll have a much better grasp on of where we'll kind of like our line in the sand number will be at the next per pupil submission. And then again, we are taking 50% of our federal dollars here. So if this board wants to see a bigger surplus, or the finance committee being like, oh, we are going into renewal in a year or so, thinks we should be showing a bigger surplus, we can lean on some of that stimulus funding to kind of cover these losses if we need to. I know that was a lot to digest. Does anybody have any questions? And enrollment is like the conversation topic of every school in the city right now. Even schools that have historically never had problems getting kids are at 94, 95, 96% of their budgeted enrollment, which is just not a position that they've been in. So every school is treating it differently, but especially just programmatically with LEEP and it being a dual language school, like kids coming in off the street in April, it's a lot easier if you're doing it in a traditional K-5 charter school and not a dual language program. So definitely get it. I know that was a lot of word vomit. Michael, defer to you on anything enrollment related or recruitment related.
I would just add two things. One is you're seeing here 311. I mentioned earlier, you know, 316.
Okay.
Yep.
So some of that has been gained back, but it's wise for us to be prepared. The other thing is that although Bob and I have gone through with a pretty fine-tooth comb based on our leadership team's moves and plans in terms of staffing, and so I think our personnel projections are quite on point and pretty much in line with what was originally budgeted. There is a round of looking again at how our plans compare to the other than personnel types of costs. And so I think we'll be able to find some kinds of savings there without impacting the program. But it's going to be an important thing for us to monitor closely with the finance committee. I think for the rest of this year, and I think if I'm not mistaken, that decision about how much of those federal grants to take needs to be sort of firmed up by about next month, right?
Yes. So the biggest tranche of federal funding that we have coming this year is called the American Rescue Plan. That is I guess it's the Biden stimulus. This school is receiving about like $1 million through that program. Again, you can take it anywhere from over 1 year to like a 36-month period. There are some schools that are, for some reason, they think the cash is going to go away and they're taking 100% of it this year and incorporating it all into the fiscal year 22 budget. Others, just with the unknowns going forward and the repercussions of the pandemic, and obviously this year's a pretty big indicator that families have left the city just because there's nobody there to like fill kindergarten seats. You know, that's kind of their rainy day fund, and they're trying to spread it out as long as they can to offset some of those enrollment shortfalls. Anyway, a reporting requirement of that grant is a semi-annual budget revision. So we will have more than enough opportunity if this board wants to roll some of that funding into fiscal year 22. We'll have that opportunity, and the state's really expecting that report from a number of schools over like December or January.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I think the big takeaway is obviously the enrollment. It's something everyone here understands. And these guys continue to work to grow it. Last night, we talked about ways to take a very critical eye on the budgeted spending and to see what we could recuperate there. The only sort of piece of color I have, just to make sure it's clear to people, is, look, I said to Bob that I'm not super keen on changing our position on federal funding this minute. And just so that everyone understands my thinking, the first part is we don't, strictly speaking, need the money today. But the other is that if you remove that money from the budgeted allocation, the school didn't make any money this year. And my guess is that it'll be very tight again next year. Right, and not having that to be able to rely on it as it continues to grow strikes me as short-sighted, to say the least. So knowing that we continue to invest heavily in developing the school, we need to know how we're going to make sure that everything is covered in the coming year plus. And so maybe it's more like 22 months or 20 months that really need to be covered by that $1 million, because we spend heavily here to make sure we provide a good product. And when things happen like this enrollment number being 5% different, it can really throw a wrench in things. So $500,000 changes. And just so, and certainly we can discuss it in executive session if there are more ideas or changes we'd like to make. But I just wanted everyone to know what we were thinking in discussions we've had about that. But unless there are questions, I think that's pretty much the finance committee.
Does anybody have any questions? We're good.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes, and thanks for being here with us in person.
Nowhere else I'd rather be.
How's it
You're the only school that's actually had, like, we work with a pretty big number, and you're the only school that's had like a live board meeting.
Really? How about that?
Yeah.
Even the 1 month where it was required?
No comment.
No, I have no comment there, and the rest are, and all of my clients are SUNY
You're a
schools.
good man. Okay, that brings us to the executive committee.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to punt and say that the executive committee is going to talk more in executive session. We've been dealing with a personnel matter that we've been trying to wrap up. I have a couple of outstanding interviews that haven't been able to be completed as of just yet. So I will apprise the board of where we stand on that investigation in executive session. And God willing, it looks like I'm going to get those next 2 interviews scheduled for tomorrow, and hopefully we'll circulate a memo of those findings by the end of the week. And I don't mean to push it off. I just I don't want to submit a report without having interviewed everybody we know to have information, and without having been able to review everything we really can find. So that was a long way of saying we'll talk about it later. With that, Emily, academic and accountability.
Great. So yeah, we met yesterday, and really the bulk of the executive director's report around MAP and what Delana shared is what we were talking about, as well as the family handbook. And I think this MAP round, and I think all the data that folks are collecting right now is really like a diagnostic set. It's not even fully yet a reflection of teaching. This is just the plug, I would say, because kids have only been in school and with these particular teachers for, under a month when we started this assessment. So this is like a roadmap of what comes next. And I think the more interesting conversation is as we track progress over the next couple months and the team implements what they've been talking about to support the kids. But I think it was definitely a productive conversation and reflective of challenges that schools are seeing across the city and across the country right now. Maho, do you want to add anything?
No, that pretty much covers it.
Great. So I suppose with that, do we have any outstanding old business?
I don't think so. We usually have this item here, but I suppose we already addressed it with the board officers tonight.
Yeah, I think that's all the board development we're gonna do today.
Well, how did just the David, Melody's and Alejandro's packets that have been submitted?
We have everything except for one set of fingerprints, which I expect to have by the end of this week, at which point we'll submit it all. So thanks to everybody who's sent in stuff, put that together and rummage through your closets for your diplomas and all those things.
Yeah.
I should have it.
Yeah, so we're almost
That's
there.
what I do with this. What do you do with it? Do people really not believe I finished high school? Don't answer that. All right.
Okay. Let me see here. So it is our time for public comment. As you all know, by policy, anyone attending our meeting can take up to 3 minutes for public comment. And one of our regulars has said she doesn't have a comment tonight, but we're glad that you are here. Ms. Woods, I'm going to keep going and just hit the allow to talk button, but if you don't feel like talking, you certainly don't have to. Ms. Rosato Bunkley, would you care to share a comment tonight?
Hi, I just wanted to say I enjoyed all the celebrations that you guys are doing for Hispanic Heritage Month. It's been really, I guess, like community building for the kids, so I've enjoyed that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We're looking forward to our community parade, and our team, I don't know if I'm talking out of school, but we may have had a few of the leftovers from the potlucks. And so thank you to everybody who sent in food. We've enjoyed seeing kids come in with mementos from their family's country of origin, whether they're Spanish speakers or from anywhere else in the world. It's really been a cool time, and appreciate the team that's helped pull it together. All right. Joanna, do you have any comments you'd like to make? It sounds like not. Feel free to leave a comment in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to chime in. Lauren, would you like to say anything tonight?
Hi, hi everybody. I actually have two things, and I guess you touched on some of these issues. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. But the first thing is regarding homework. I understand that you're looking into the homework and how to revise, perhaps. Well, I'm not privy to what happened, obviously, that at the academic meeting. But to what extent? My understanding is that all the kids are getting the same exact homework. And I'm just wondering if the academic committee is looking into perhaps tailoring the homework so that it perhaps helps, it reinforces things that kids who perhaps need extra reinforcement, for this, even the basics might need, and also challenges those kids who who don't need to practice writing 1 to 100, but want something more challenging. Is that being considered in terms of just just tailoring it so that it can be a little more not obviously kid specific, but to reinforce the strengths as well as to help with any weaknesses?
We can definitely speak to that. Do you want to share your other question, and then we can speak to both?
Sure. I mean, again, this goes to what was being discussed earlier about small groups, but it was more in terms of small groups in helping kids who were identified by the MAP exam as needing as additional reinforcement. I'm just wondering again if there are kids that perhaps having a teacher go reinforcing 1 to 100 for a kid who knows that might not really be very helpful in getting that kid to, to progress. So to what extent are small groups being considered for math, for, for the kids to break out and maybe work with kids who are further along, and also for the kids that are not further along to be with kids that, that also need that help so that they can get more personalized attention and also have the support of one another.
Yeah, I can. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes. So in terms of homework, yes, I agree that there is some personalization that can be done depending on where we're seeing the needs of particular students. So that is a change that we're considering and looking into, and that we'll be speaking with the instructional team to see what's the best way and the most efficient way for us to get that done. But we do definitely want the homework to be something that feels purposeful for our families, and we understand that for one student, right, for, as you said, for an example, writing their numbers is where they're at, but then there's another student where that might not be as relevant, and we want to make sure that they're getting the practice that they need at their particular level. So that is something that we will be looking into to revise as a next step. In terms of the groupings, so when we do the groupings, we're grouping according to RIT score, and so right, who are our highest students, who are our mid students, who are our low students. And the goal is that they're getting that instruction at their level. We've added everyone is hands-on now with these intervention, guided reading. We have our specialists. Everyone is in there. And so we're looking at right now sort of staffing and making sure that everyone has a group and every group is getting instruction at the particular level that they're at, whether right, that's intervention that they need or extra supports to go even higher than where they are right now. So we are looking at our master schedule, our staffing, all of the resources that we have, so that when we have that time where the whole school is in intervention, that means that we're also giving supports for the students who are performing at the higher end and pushing them to excel even further.
Okay. That sounds great. Do you have like a timeline for that when you think that that'll be grade wide?
I think that we're in the middle of adjusting our master schedule and figuring out some of the scheduling pieces. So I would say in another maybe 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. or Ms. Mohammed, would you like to share any comments tonight? Mr. or Ms. Mohammed? Okay. Again, if you didn't get a chance to share, but you're still on the line, feel free to drop something in the chat. We appreciate everyone for being here and joining us tonight. And I believe, I'll get back to our agenda, but I think that we are next scheduled to move into an executive session.
So hearing no further public comment, I will enter a motion to adjourn to executive session.
And that would be, you should probably name the purpose of.
I guess to discuss where we are with our ongoing personnel matter and to briefly walk the board through some of the real estate issues that are in the works. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you need a second for that?
Yes. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Thanks. So all in favor of adjourning for that session, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? No. Thank you. I will try to keep.
Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
Hi, everyone. For anyone else still on the line, typically the board will only come back to adjourn the meeting, but we will remain on this piece.
But yes, my expectation is we will only. do one meeting this term. I can assure you, we will do nothing more than that. All right, I just give you the rest. Everyone gets to leave right away.
Well, I think most people did. Like I was saying.
Well, they were already gone.
Yeah, exactly. They just closed the computer.
Are we back?
We're back.
All right, guys, thank you for a very informative executive session. Our new chair, Emily Fernandez, had to leave us. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second. Second. All right, all in favor of adjourning the October LEEP board meeting? Please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
8:14.
All right. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you for putting up with the time.